Welcome everyone to the Q&A session for our February 2024 Secure and Governed Stage Roadmap Review. Sarah, you've got the first announcement for us.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So we are shifting the format of this a little bit. Previously, it had been a strategy review, and we got feedback that information that would be more useful is a review of near-term roadmap items, and then highlights on what was recently released. So we took that feedback. That's now the format. We'll be recording these every quarter, and they'll be available in HighSpot.
Awesome, and I see a question from Adam. I don't see Adam on. Would someone like to verbalize that question there?
Sure, I can go ahead and verbalize. Adam says, I am seeing more interest in accounts where we integrate with existing scanning tools. Is making this integration experience something that is being considered in the fiscal year 25 roadmap?
So I'm not quite sure what Adam had in mind here, but we can clarify with him async some more. But there are a very large number of security scanning tools that already integrate with GitLab. And the way that works is as long as they adhere to our standard format, so if they output their results in the format that we accept, we're able to ingest those results and present them really everywhere in GitLab, just like you would get with the same experience that you would get with our native scanners. So we show those vulnerabilities in our vulnerability report. You'll see the dependencies in the dependency list. You'll see that information in the merge request view, and you can also enforce security policies against those findings. So I think really all or almost all of the top external scanning tools out there integrate with GitLab. There are just like a small number that I think don't, but the vast majority of them do, and we're pretty tool agnostic in that respect. I kind of get maybe from the question that Adam's sending our scan results out to an external tool to be managed there. And technically you can do this, like we do support getting the data out of GitLab through our APIs. But this isn't really an area that we're proactively investing in because we want users to be managing their vulnerabilities inside of GitLab. So we really see that as the focal point for all of that vulnerability management. That's where the developers are doing their work. And so from a shift left perspective, we want to bring that in line with the developer experience. And that's pretty hard to do if it's outside of GitLab. So we don't have any immediate plans to send those results out to other tools more proactively, other than just making that available through our APIs. And I don't see any other questions, so this might be a super short meeting. Are there any other questions or comments about the roadmap review that we've got and our plans over the next 3 months?
I haven't had time to look at the roadmap review, but I just got off a call with a customer, and I told them I'd come back to them with some more information. But something I'm noticing in a pattern with my customers that are interested in our security scanning is more support around malware detection. So it's not a capability that, as I understand, we currently support. So the idea would be we have a scanner that allows them to look for code patterns in their code that might be launching a crypto miner, or the other thing that they said, which was a little strange, but looking for like software that has like opinionated political messaging as part of their like README or something like that. So they were wondering if like that's something we've ever thought about or considering, or are we not going to go down that route of advanced, I guess, composition analysis maybe.
I can say one thing about the history while John picks up on the present and future. I know that we did have a malware detection category in very, very early stages that like Sam might remember. It was before my time, but we did remove that intentionally. And I think it sounds to me like it's talking more about like trustworthiness of dependencies, which I think, John, you unmuted, you probably have something to say about like trustworthiness versus vulnerabilities. Did you have something to say, or
Yeah, I was just going to say there's nothing directly on the roadmap to support that now, but I think it's something that I've heard in the past. People would be interested in, but I think we'd have to really put some thought into how to actually implement that. to see if there's some data sourcing that we could get or some sort of modeling that we could do to understand that type of risk. So I guess to follow up, if you want to connect me with the customer, I'm happy to chat with them to understand, what exactly they're looking for. If they have some examples, that would be great, just to kind of understand their problem that they're trying to tackle.
Yeah, that'd be great. They're a potential ultimate customer, so this might be a good trust building exercise. Yeah, I'll take that offline. Thank you, John.
I'll just add a note too that there is the open source project of ClamAV, which is a malware scanner. And so if they really wanted to, they could run that in a pipeline. I think, as Connor kind of alluded to, we used to have that malware category. We looked at it, it kind of didn't seem to hold a lot of promise because it's pretty easy to just pop that in a GitLab pipeline, download your Git repository and run ClamAV against it if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I suggested something along those lines. I didn't specify a specific tool, but that's good to know that there is already an open source tool out there that we could potentially plug and play. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments on our roadmap?
I don't have a
Adam is
question,
here.
but
also,
oh,
so-
sorry. Go ahead, Connor. You go ahead.
I was just saying, it looks like Adam is here now for the question that's number 2 on the agenda. If Adam, you want to pick that up again?
Yes,
Roberta,
sorry,
didn't mean to
sorry,
stomp on you.
Sorry, I'm coming in a bit late. I had a customer call that went far over. I see you put a few comments in on my question. So we see in the field that in general coming in to say, hey, here's this vision of Ultimate, here's all this policy, here's how we can build these very interesting security workflows that bring developer and AppSec together into a central place. That often goes hand in hand with like, and here's all of our scanners, retire, barcode, sneak, or whatever. That has worked to limited success, and we see a lot of interest in integrating the results from these external tools into GitLab. And what I've seen is there's a few industry standards, but there's a schema we publish, and then it's either PS or the customer needs to build some transformation or some integration to actually ingest those. So the question was more around like, are we thinking of standardizing on Seraph or having a library of ingesters that it's copy and paste YAML into a pipeline to get something like Sneak brought into our platform versus like custom work. So I'll pause there. I don't know if there's other discussion that took place before I joined, but that's kind of what we're seeing in the Southeast.
Maybe I don't know if you had a chance to read what Sam said, but on the Seraph bit particularly, we have been thinking about Seraph. There are ways that it is nicer than the SAS report, in that like a lot of tools support it because it's built to be an open standard that's used lots of places. There are some differences that make it not an obvious. There's some differences in concepts and like severity and things that make it not an obvious sort of drop-in replacement. So today we see, there aren't a ton of SaaS vendors out there, and then the big ones have built a converter to our format. Like Fortify has one. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head if everyone has, but I would say we've considered the Seraph thing. And then
I just use it as an example, just because I know there's some existing open source. Maybe what you said is just not well known in the field that these vendors have built the converters, or maybe we need to do a little bit better job in our docs of linking out to that, because the workflow in the field is we're working with XYZ very large enterprise. They say we love this, let's test this out with Veracode. And then, myself or Christian or whatever solution architect is like, oh crap, okay, let me spend my weekend writing some Python script that does that, or at least gets it to Seraph, so then we can use the open source library. So if there's existing stuff out there that could help us, that certainly could fill the gap for a bit.
Yeah, I think those are typically documented by the vendor who's integrating. We've made attempts to link out to them in some places, but there's
Mhm.
probably room for improvement there. Yeah. So that's something we can note. Sam, I noticed you wanted to chime in on Sneak particularly.
Yeah, you mentioned Sneak, and they're one of the few that I think don't have a native integration with GitLab for whatever reason. So they're a little bit of an exception case. Most of the other major vendors do. And I just dropped a link there in the note stock to the Technology Alliances partner page where we list out. This isn't filtered right now just to companies that have security integrations. This is all of our Technology Alliances partners, but you can see like the list of companies that have worked with us in one way or another related to security on that page. There's also a pretty interesting discussion if you're looking at Sneak in particular in Slack that I can share with you. We'll probably need to try to move it to an issue so it gets preserved and not deleted. But I know there are some tools out there that kind of help convert Serif into GitLab format to some extent. And like Connor said, it's not an obvious drop-in replacement, but if you're just trying to get something or anything to work, there are some tools out there that kind of help.
Yeah, those have been helpful. What I've noticed is those are limited to our SAST schema, and I had less success taking like a container scan from Sneak or SCA scan and moving that over. Right, there's a little bit of finagling you got to do to add a few additional fields that are unique to those different types of scan results in our schema. Cool,
Yeah,
but
on
I
the
mean, this is
container
really,
side,
really
I don't
helpful.
know if, John, you want to talk to this a little bit more. I guess it depends on if you're trying to bring in results or if you just want the data to show up, but we are standardizing on being able to just accept the Cyclone DX SBOM, which is a really standard format. Of course, that gets analyzed against our vulnerability database and like our advisory database, so the results might be a little bit different, but that is one area of standardization where if the vendor is able to provide a Cyclone DX file, now we can accept that and ingest that, and we'll scan that for vulnerabilities and licenses automatically.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I think it depends on like what they're looking for specifically, right? So if they want just to analyze their SBOM, we can do that and give them, like Sam was saying, the data from our license DB and GLAD. But if they want the actual scan results from, whichever provider they have currently, they would need to pass the JSON. I think someone linked the documentation in there as well. And that would show up in all the dependency lists, vulnerability report, and a couple of other places as well. So I think there's a couple of options depending on their use case.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate all of the information. I didn't expect to get this much. I wanted to bubble this more up. Just like any way we think about making this easier for a customer to consume is going to go a long way, because as you can imagine, solution architects at GitLab, we're probably far deeper in the product than our customers are. And if we struggle with it a bit, imagine, if they're not talking to us, what their experience is going to look like if they said, oh, let me plug X, one bespoke app team wants to do something without moving off their scanner. They're gonna have a hard go at it and probably have to give us a call.
All right.
I guess my question, just to kind of tie the knot on that one, just to understand like design philosophy, like what's our philosophy around integrations? Is it like more of we would reach out to like an integration point and adhere to their API, or would we prefer they adhere to our API? Like in the case of Sneak, right? Like as long as it's PDX compatible, that's okay. But in the case of like other vendors where it's a non-compatible format, would we go down the route of doing custom integration work if the receiving vendor or the other vendor that's not us is not willing to write an integration into GitLab?
No, we've never done any sort of custom integration work like that, and I don't think we want to set that precedent. So far, all of the integrations that we've got have been the other vendors adjusting the output of their scan results to adhere to our format so that we can ingest them. So that way we have one standardized ingestion format and we're not trying to like productize, tens of different, conversion scripts.
Totally agree. But that's good to know because customers have asked me that and I didn't have a good response. So appreciate that. Thank you.
I can also add in there something about Cyclone DX. So I think most of the point solutions that we would probably want to, or our customers would want to integrate with, can support Cyclone DX and SPDX SBOM generation. I know a number of them also have the ability to suppress vulnerabilities from showing up in their SBOM report. So if they wanted to get our data, they could import a Cyclone DX or an SPDX SBOM without that vulnerability information, and then we would perform the match within our own ecosystem. Again, just something food for thought.
Thank you.
Olivier, did you want to vocalize what you're writing?
Yeah, just a little nuance on what's been said about SBOM as a source of data. On our roadmap, we only consider getting the list of components from an SBOM document. So even if it's part of the spec for Cyclone DX, for instance, to provide vulnerabilities for components, and as you said, most of the time they will remove that information for security reason. We don't have any plan yet to ingest that information from that document. So if you want to provide us with an SBOM, we will only take the list of component from there and do the security scans in the backend. But if you want to provide security reports, you have to use the dependency scanning, container scanning, or other security reports specifically.
Yeah, that's a good nuance to call out, is like, are they just trying to report up components and have a scan with our advisory database, or do they want to report up vulnerabilities that came from their advisory database? So a slight nuance there. Which
I think for my customers, it would be more of like the latter, right? They have an external tool that is connecting to some sort of external database. Maybe it's internal, maybe it's the database of the third-party vendor that they're using, but they're wanting to take that data in there and include it as part of a larger compliance framework, or take advantage of scan execution policies and scan result MR review policies, and take advantage of the workflows that they can get in GitLab while still retaining the ability to use these third-party systems.
yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, in that case, like Olivier said, you would need to not use the Cyclone DX format for that. You would have to use the security report format that Thomas linked below. Yeah, good dialogue there. All right. Anything else that you'd like to discuss as a group?
I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to thank everybody from the PM side and everybody who supports the PMs. As a CSM, like y'all are truly the MVPs. I want to give out specifically a shout out to Alana, who has just been tremendous. Alana, the two customers that you met recently have provided really good feedback. Those sessions were really helpful and really just helps with the relationship. So I just want to give everybody thanks. I'm sure you've seen my name a few times, and you'll probably see it again in the future. So just thank you. While everyone's in the room, just want to take that 30 seconds. So
I'm glad Zoom doesn't show how red my face is, but thank you, Eduardo.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining and for all the dialogue and discussion today. Appreciate it. Hope you all have a great week.
Thanks. See y'all.